Hello folks. Vortex just released a new version of the Crossfire binoculars, and they now carry the HD designation. I have experience with the previous Crossfires, and I decided to compare them to the new HD version and see how much has changed. These are still Vortex's cheapest roof prism binoculars, and the retail pricing didn't increase as far as I can see beyond the fact that the originals are now on sale at some places. With the new Crossfire HD and Diamondback HD, Vortex now labels the majority of their binoculars as HD. They call everything from $130 to $1,000 binoculars HD, and at that point I can't help but feel like calling any of them HD is losing meaning beyond marketing speak. It feels like pure buzzword marketing to me, particularly since the newly released Razors are now called Ultra HD. And unlike being tied to a particular pixel count, it's hard to say what specific criteria an optical design has to meet in order to be called HD, or if there even is a specific criteria beyond better than something else or better than the previous version. Since Vortex don't quantify what specifically constitutes HD, I think they've watered down the term a bit and stripped it of some of the weight it once carried. But a mini rant on the HD label aside, any improvement that doesn't carry a price increase is welcome, and I wanted to see for myself what, if any, improvements have been made. For starters, the Crossfires now come with the glass pack case and binocular harness. And they come with a nicer padded strap, so if nothing else, they are a better value than the previous version based on the included accessories. The objective caps and the one-piece ocular cover are the same as the non-HD version, and that's fine as I have no complaints about them. The overall build is essentially identical to the previous version. The twist-up eye cups are the same. No click-stop positions, but they're smooth and they work fine. The focus knob is not as consistent on my particular Crossfire HD as the one on my older Crossfires. I think it's most likely due to sample variation rather than a design change in the HDs, but either way, the focus knob on the newer pair is a little bit stiffer to turn, which isn't an issue on its own, but there's a small amount of movement when reversing direction that has almost zero resistance. This makes achieving perfect focus a bit more fiddly on the HDs than on my older pair. It isn't a big deal, but it was noticeable when comparing the two. The diopter adjustment doesn't lock, but it's fairly stiff without being difficult to turn, and I imagine they could get bumped out of adjustment, but it's not likely to happen too easily. Note that both of these are adjusted for me, and the adjustment points are in different places. So while the marks can be used to return to a specific setting if moved, I couldn't use the marks to match the settings on the old pair to the new ones. Initially, I did set the diopter on the new HDs at the same position that they are on the old one, and it wasn't right. I took some time to adjust it for my eyes, and this is where I ended up. If I didn't look at the slightly different labeling when I was picking them up, I couldn't tell a difference in my hands. Unfortunately, I couldn't do a blind test between the two because the extra play in the focus knob of the HDs did give it away as soon as I started focusing. As for optics, I have a strong feeling that optical design is virtually unchanged. My guess is that only the lens coatings are different. That's only a guess, but either way, the optics of the new Crossfire HDs have far more in common with the old model than they have differences. Eye relief is unchanged from the previous version, and it's more than adequate for me as a glasses wearer. But they do have a finicky nature about eye placement. I often found myself fidgeting with the binoculars, moving them side to side or tilting them slightly to get the largest, clearest, and brightest view possible. It's not a big deal, but they are less forgiving than many other binoculars I've used. And the old Crossfires and the new HD version are identical in this regard. The close focus distance is also identical in both versions, right around 7 feet. Not the closest focusing binoculars out there, but not bad. The lens coatings do appear different. On the HD version, they're a slightly deeper blue-green color, so I'm confident the coatings are different. The new coatings seem to provide a bit better light transmission, particularly yellows, which stand out a bit more than in the previous version. This makes the overall view just a tiny bit brighter and warmer. The differences are subtle, though, and both are bright and give good color. The Crossfire HDs have some distortion. It's not terrible, but it can sometimes be noticeable, particularly when panning if there are straight lines in the view. Or I should say, lines that should be straight. Distortion is exactly the same as what I see in the previous version. Chromatic aberration is very dependent on eye position in terms of how much color franging stands out. Because of that, color fringing varies in both pairs depending on how precisely I position my eyes. The HD version certainly doesn't have more than the old version, and I initially thought it had slightly less. In the end, I'd say they have similar levels of color fringing. Both are okay, it's never terrible, and sometimes a little fidgeting with eye placement can make it mostly disappear. The Crossfire HDs are very sharp and clear. Views are very detailed with great resolution and contrast. Sharpness fall off towards the edge of the view is fairly low, and it never stood out or bothered me. Overall, an excellent, sharp HD view. And compared to the old version, I was basically identical. I couldn't see any improvement in sharpness, resolution, or overall clarity. It's not really too surprising, as the old Crossfires were already pretty good, and the price didn't increase. But if you're wondering how much extra clarity you get to go along with the HD designation, I couldn't really see any after multiple days of back and forth comparisons. Ultimately, I think the HD label is more marketing than anything, but the new coatings do seem to make a difference, even if it's a small one, and the better included accessories are nice as well. I think it's a fine evolution of the Crossfires, especially since they retail for the same price as the previous version. I think Vortex is getting a little carried away with putting HD on everything, but these are still good binoculars, there's a lot to like here, and it's a pretty compelling package for the price. Though if you already have the previous version of the Crossfires, it's probably not worth upgrading to the HD version. So that's my thoughts on the new Vortex Crossfire HD. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. Take care.